If I catch you touching anything in this house, Olivia, I swear I'll feed you to the dogs." That was the first sentence my new boss, Anthony Okafor, spoke to me before I'd even dropped my nylon bag on the tiled floor. I had come to Lagos with one nylon bag, 3 blouses, and dreams too big for my pocket. Mama used to say Lagos was where poor girls either became queens or corpses. And standing in the marble hallway of Anthony Okafor's mansion, I wasn't sure which one I was going to be. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't from that world. But when Mama fell sick in the village and the hospital bills came like fire, I had no choice. The maid agency said it was a simple cleaning job. They didn't tell me the last maid had left in the middle of the night, without her clothes, without her phone, without a word, and without a trace. The first thing I saw when the iron gates opened was money. Not in cash, but in marble driveways, security dogs with diamond-studded collars, and a fleet of black SUVs that looked like they could drive through a war zone without a scratch. I clutched my old nylon handbag tighter. It held everything I owned: 2 dresses, my late father's Bible, and the letter that had gotten me here. "Congratulations, you have been selected for employment as a domestic staff in the residence of Mr. Anthony Okafor." Anthony Okafor wasn't just a billionaire. He was the billionaire, owner of Cole Holdings, a man whose face was always on the cover of City People magazine. His eyes were cold like he'd swallowed ice, his words sharp enough to cut flesh. But what they didn't write in the newspapers was the darkness that lived in that house, and the secret he would pay anything to keep me from discovering. The mansion loomed ahead, painted a shade of white that made it look like it had been cut from the clouds. A beautiful uniformed maid met me at the front door. She was slim, tall, and had eyes that looked like they had seen too much. "You don't belong here, girl," she said flatly, blocking the entrance. I'm here for the maid job," I stammered, holding out my letter. She didn't take it. Her gaze swept over me, my worn slippers, faded skirt, and the scarf tied over my hair. Then she said under her breath, almost like a whisper, "You look too good and innocent for this." Before I could ask what she meant, the massive double doors opened and a man stepped out. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire village. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet danger, like a lion deciding whether or not you were worth killing. "Olivia, right?" he said in a voice that was smooth but carried weight. "Yes, sir," I said quickly. "If I catch you touching things and being places you shouldn't, I swear I will feed you to the dogs." He didn't shout. His tone was low, almost casual, but the threat inside it was as sharp as a knife's edge. He stood tall, broad-shouldered, his dark eyes drilling straight through me. 2 massive Rottweilers sat beside him, their heads tilted, ears perked, as if they understood every word. "Yes, sir," I whispered, clutching my bag tighter. He gave me a look that said I'd already failed some invisible test, then turned and walked deeper into the mansion, his cane tapping against the marble. The sound echoed long after he disappeared. The house was unlike anything I had ever seen: cold, towering, and painfully silent. The chandelier above me glittered like a frozen waterfall, but the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. A tall woman in a gray uniform appeared from the side hallway. "Follow me," she said, her voice brisk. No greeting, no smile. I trailed behind her, trying to take in my surroundings. Every wall seemed to carry a story: portraits of stern-faced men, glass cases filled with strange artifacts, and corridors that branched off into shadows. "I'm Mrs. Bello, head housekeeper," she said without turning. "You answered to me. You don't speak to Mr. Cole unless he speaks to you first. You don't go upstairs unless instructed. And under no circumstances do you open the golden door." golden door? I wanted to ask. But the look she shot over her shoulder warned me to keep my curiosity buried deep. Her face was as rigid as her posture, her eyes sharp. She looked me up and down like she could already see all my flaws. We reached my room small, bare, with a single bed and a wooden wardrobe. The tiny window overlooked the backyard, but much, much better than my shared room in Surulere. Meals are at 6. Chores start at 5 in the morning. Lock your door at night, Mrs. Bello said, then walked away without another word. I didn't know it yet, but that first day was the beginning of a game I was never meant to survive. Olivia, let me warn you. In this house, walls have ears, even the walls that look silent. That was the whisper from Mama Grace, the head cook, on my second day at the Tony's mansion. She said it like a prayer, with eyes darting to the corners as if the walls themselves were listening. By then, I had already begun to notice things. The mansion was too quiet for a house that big. Even the workers spoke in half sentences, as if someone might punish them for finishing their words. There was this tension in the air, the kind you feel before a heavy rain when the clouds gather like they're holding a secret. The Tony mansion stood in Banana Island like a palace. The floors were Italian marble, the chandeliers sparkled like frozen rain, and the garden smelled of roses and something faintly metallic. I couldn't place it. The staff quarters were far at the back, almost hidden behind tall hedges. You could live there for months and never meet the master unless he called for you. Anthony Okafor didn't call for me. He summoned. The first time it happened, it was 11:43 p.m. I was lying on my narrow bed, exhausted from cleaning the West Wing, when Uche, the security guard, banged on my door. "Madam say Olga wants see you now." I thought it was a joke. Who calls a maid at midnight? I stepped into the main building and the air felt different. Warmer, heavy. The East Wing's golden door glimmered under the hallway light, locked as always. As I passed it, I felt watched. When I entered his study, Mr. Tony didn't look up from the file he was reading. "You cleaned my office today," he said, voice calm, but there was something in it like a blade under velvet. "Yes, sir," I answered. "Did you see anything unusual?" I shook my head quickly, though my mind flashed to the half-burned photograph I had found in the waste bin. A woman's face, smiling, but the eyes scratched out with something sharp. "Good," he said, finally lifting his gaze to me. Those eyes, cold, sharp, searching, made my skin prickle. "You will be rewarded for your loyalty, Olivia, but you will also be destroyed if you betray me." That night, as I walked back to the quarters, Mama Grace's words echoed in my head. In this house, walls have ears. And I began to wonder whose ears were listening. The staff's, the master's, or something else. They told me never to go near the East Wing. It wasn't an instruction, it was a warning. Every maid, every guard, even Mama Grace spoke about it in lowered tones. They said it was Mr. Tony's private space, but the way they avoided it felt deeper. By my third week, I had already memorized every inch of the West Wing, the golden chandeliers, the marble floors, the long hallways that smelled of imported lavender. But my eyes kept wandering to that side of the house with the heavy golden door. It was always locked. One Tuesday afternoon, while dusting the gallery, I noticed something strange. The East Wing door was open, just slightly. I froze. My heart pounded like talking drum. I could have ignored it. I should have ignored it. But curiosity is a stubborn spirit. Once it calls your name, it won't let you rest. The air inside was colder than the rest of the mansion. The corridor was dim, lined with paintings of women all different, yet each one seemed to have the same eyes. Eyes that followed you, accusing, almost pleading. At the far end of the hall was another door, this one wooden, with carvings of strange patterns I'd never seen before. I reached out, my fingers brushing the handle. Olivia! I jumped so hard I nearly screamed. Mama Grace was standing behind me, her face pale. Do you have a death wish? She hissed, dragging me back. Ma, I just saw. She pressed her palm over my mouth. Don't talk about what you saw. Don't even think about it. People who think too much in this house disappear. That night I couldn't sleep. The cold air from the east wing still clung to my skin, and in my mind those painted eyes kept following me. Somewhere deep inside me I knew that door was holding a secret, and secrets don't stay locked forever. They say Legis never sleeps, but that night the mansion felt like the city had forgotten it existed. It was well past midnight when I woke up to the sound of low voices drifting through my window. At first I thought it was the guards gossiping again, but then I heard something else chanting, slow, rhythmic, and in a language I didn't understand. I peeked through my curtain. Out in the garden, lit only by the pale glow of the moon, Mr. Tony. He wasn't wearing his usual Italian suits. He was in a long red robe embroidered with gold symbols. Around him, 5 men knelt, each holding a white clay pot. One of them tipped his pot over, pouring what looked like blood onto the grass. My breath caught. The smell metallic, sharp, drifted all the way to my window. Mr. Tony raised his hands to the sky, his voice deep and commanding. Ani na ele anya anya, take this offering and bless your servant. The ground felt like it shivered under my feet. One of the kneeling men began to shake violently, his eyes rolling back. Mr. Tony didn't even flinch. He stepped forward and dipped his fingers into the blood, smearing it on the man's forehead. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. Then, as if pulled by instinct, Mr. Tony's head snapped in my direction. His eyes locked on mine through the darkness. I dropped to the floor, heart racing. For a long moment, I stayed there, trembling, listening to the fading chants. The next morning, the garden looked normal. Freshly cut grass, birds chirping, no trace of blood. But at breakfast, while pouring his tea, Mr. Tony looked at me a little too long, a small, knowing smile on his face. And I knew he had seen me. Mr. Tony rarely called me by name or spoke to me, so when his deep voice echoed through the hallway that morning, I froze. Olivia, he said from the doorway of his study, tonight I'm hosting a gathering. Very high profile. You will serve drinks. It wasn't a question, and from the way his eyes lingered on me, I knew refusal wasn't an option. By evening, the mansion glittered like a palace. Gold-trimmed curtains framed the grand hall, and expensive perfumes floated in the air like invisible royalty. I moved silently among the crowd of wealthy men in agbadas, women dripping in diamonds, and politicians who laughed too loudly. Mr. Tony stood in the center, all charm and wealth, shaking hands like a man who owned more than money. I was refilling glasses when I caught sight of a tall man in a black agbada striding toward him. His face was stern, voice sharp. Anthony, the man said without greeting, we need to talk about the girl in the East Wing. My fingers tightened around the tray. The East Wing? That was where I'd found the golden door. Where I'd seen that photograph. Mr. Tony's smile didn't falter, but there was steel in his tone. This is not the place for that discussion, Chief. The man didn't back down. She is too close. The ritual demands purity. If she stays there any longer, you'll destroy everything we've worked for. The word ritual sliced through me. My heart thudded so hard I thought they might hear it over the music. Mr. Tony's gaze flicked briefly to me, his eyes cold and knowing. I quickly looked away, pretending to adjust the drinks on my tray, but my mind was screaming. What ritual? What did it have to do with me? The rest of the night blurred. Every laugh, every clink of a glass felt like it was happening under a shadow. I avoided Mr. Tony's eyes, but I could feel his presence like heat on the back of my neck. One thing became clear: the East Wing held answers, but it might also hold the reason I would never leave this mansion alive. I was already praying to be paid, so to leave the mansion, but the payment comes after passing an unknown test. I was barely done arranging breakfast in the dining room when Anthony walked in, wearing a crisp white caftan and that dangerous calm I'd learned to fear. "Sit," he said. My knees wobbled as I obeyed. He poured himself a cup of coffee, stirring it slowly, his gold wristwatch catching the morning light. Then he looked at me not with anger, but with the cold calculation of a man who had already decided your fate. "Olivia," he began, voice low, "I know you've been curious. You've seen things you shouldn't have." My throat went dry. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Here's the deal. You stay quiet, you ask no questions, and I'll pay you 10 times your salary. Enough to change your life." 10 times my salary. It was more money than I'd ever dreamed of seeing in my lifetime. But the image of that photograph, Anthony covered in blood, the coffin beside him, flashed in my mind, and the man at the party talking about purity and rituals. I swallowed hard and forced my lips into a grateful smile. "Thank you, sir. I understand." His eyes lingered on me, as though searching for cracks in my words. Then, with a short nod, he rose from his chair. "Good. Because, Olivia," he paused at the doorway, "if you cross me, you won't live long enough to regret it." When he was gone, my smile collapsed into a shiver. I needed to act like the obedient maid he believed I was, but inside I was already plotting. Every door, every whispered conversation, every suspicious guest, I would dig deeper until I knew exactly what this man was hiding. Because no amount of money was worth dying for. The morning after Anthony's threat, I was dusting the shelves in the East Wing library when I found something strange wedged between two oversized encyclopedias, a small, tattered diary with Kioma written on the cover. I had never heard that name among the staff. Flipping it open, I found shaky handwriting, the ink smudged in places, as if written in haste. My hands trembled as I read. "He said I must never speak of what I heard, but I can't keep quiet. They're planning something during the governor's visit." I heard the word sacrifice. I'm scared. I think he knows I was listening. My breath caught. Kioma. She must have been the maid before me. The next pages became more disturbing. She described overhearing Anthony and a powerful politician arguing about a scandal that could destroy both their reputations. Something about a missing girl, a coffin, and a ritual meant to cleanse the matter from public knowledge. One entry made my blood run cold. "If I disappear, know that it's him. He said my tongue will never speak again. If you're reading this, run." The last entry was dated only 2 weeks before I started working in the mansion. I snapped the diary shut, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. This was no coincidence. Mr. Tony didn't just hire me. I had replaced someone who knew too much. As I slid the diary into my apron pocket, I heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, I hid behind the curtain, barely breathing. 2 voices entered the library, Mr. Tony and his younger brother, Daniel. "She's getting too comfortable," Mr. Tony said flatly. "The last thing I need is another Kioma situation." Daniel's reply was quiet, almost hesitant. "Olivia's different. Don't hurt her." Mr. Tony's low chuckle was like ice water down my spine. "That's what you said about the last one." My legs felt like lead. Mr. Tony had killed her, and if I wasn't careful, I'd be next. It was well past midnight when I crept into the kitchen for a glass of water. The mansion was silent, the kind of silence that felt unnatural, like the air itself was holding its breath. I almost screamed when a shadow detached itself from the pantry doorway. Shh! A large, calloused hand covered my mouth. My heart raced until my eyes adjusted, and I recognized him, Musa, one of the older security guards. He was loyal, quiet, the type of man who never looked anyone in the eye for too long. "Madam Olivia," he whispered urgently, glancing over his shoulder, "I don't have much time. You must leave this house before the next sacrifice night." The words hit me like a slap. My mind scrambled for the meaning. Sacrifice. Night? I repeated under my breath. Musa's face was grim, eyes darting around like even the walls could betray him. "I've worked for Olga Anthony for 8 years. I've seen things." His voice shook. "Every third month there is a ceremony. They say it is to bless the business, but it is blood that buys the blessing." I swallowed hard, remembering the coffin, the blood-stained photographs, Kioma's diary. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to barely more than a breath. "3 days from now, the governor will be here. The East Wing will be locked, and the music will play all night to cover the screams. That is the night, madam. And this time," he hesitated, his eyes glistening, "this time it is you." My knees almost gave way. "Why are you telling me this?" Musa's jaw tightened. "Because I have a daughter your age, and you have been good and respectful to me. I can't watch it happen again. I will leave the back gate unlocked at 2 a.m. tomorrow. If you stay, I swear by Allah, you will not leave alive." Before I could respond, heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway. Musa stepped back into the shadows, melting into them like he was never there. I stood frozen, clutching the kitchen counter, the taste of fear sharp on my tongue. 3 days. That was all I had. All my excusable efforts to leave the mansion was abortive. The maids avoid me. Even Mama Grace, she made sure her eyes never met mine. I was so scared and hopeful to God for a miracle. I had gone to the kitchen to make tea when 2 of Anthony's guards appeared. No words, no warning, just rough hands shoving me down the East Wing corridor. Before I could scream, the golden door swung open and I was thrown inside. The room was exactly as I had left it, the coffin in the center. Photographs of Anthony drenched in old dried blood hanging crooked on the walls. But now there was something new. A red chalk circle drawn on the marble floor. Symbols etched around it that pulsed faintly in the candlelight. From outside I heard them. Low voices at first, then louder, in a language I didn't recognize. Chanting, rhythmic, steady, growing more intense with each verse. My heartbeat synced with the drum beats that began to pound, muffled yet heavy, as if the earth itself was keeping time. Then it hit me, Musa's warning. 3 days from now, this time it is you. My breath came fast, my palms slick with sweat. I rushed to the door locked. I pounded with both fists, screaming until my throat burned, but the chants only grew louder. Through a small crack in the doorframe, I caught glimpses of movement. Figures in long crimson robes, faces hidden behind wooden masks, circling a fire in the courtyard. In the middle, Anthony stood in a white agbada embroidered with gold, his eyes cold, lips moving in perfect rhythm with the chants. He held something in his hand, a dagger, its blade gleaming under the moonlight. Suddenly, the coffin beside me creaked open. I froze. Inside, beneath black silk, was a small wooden idol smeared with fresh blood. Around it were bones, human bones, and what looked like strands of hair tied with red thread. The door rattled. Someone was unlocking it from the outside. Panic exploded inside me. My eyes darted around for anything to defend myself. The only thing I found was a heavy brass candlestick. I gripped it with both hands, my knees shaking. The lock clicked. The chanting stopped. And then, silence. I woke to seeing only one guard by the door. I was tired with a red piece of cloth, wrapped with a white cloth, like a sacrifice ready to be slain. The music was loud enough to conceal a thunderstorm, and a tough thought came to me. You rather fight now or be slain? I curled a little, dragging the white cloth a little to reveal my cleavage, a lustful motion on him to come have me. I could tell he craved it with the way his eyes were darting around them. Untie me to have the best of me. Wouldn't you want to taste this sweet and succulent oranges? I asked, and like a man under a spell, or God performing his miracle, he hurriedly untied me, and just as he was about unzipping his trousers, I kicked him so hard between his legs. As soon as he fell and groaned in pains, with adrenaline surging through my veins, I moved. My eyes darted to the idol in the coffin, the key to whatever dark power Mr. Tony believed in. I didn't think, I just grabbed it, wrapped it in a piece of cloth, and tucked it under my uniform. The voices outside had started chanting again, but softer now, like a prelude to something worse. I slipped out of the room through a narrow side door I'd noticed earlier when cleaning. The passage was damp, crawling with cobwebs, and led me deep beneath the mansion. Every step echoed too loudly in my ears. I could hear footsteps above me, Mr. Tony's men, moving about, preparing for sacrifice night. My heart was hammering so fast I thought they might hear it. Finally, the passage ended in a rusty iron door. Musa had left it open as promised. I pushed with all my strength. It groaned, then gave way, spilling me into the bushy back area of the estate. The night air was cold, but I didn't stop running. Branches whipped my face, mud sucked at my shoes, but the fear in my chest burned hotter than the pain in my legs. By the time I reached the main road, my breath was ragged. I waved desperately at the first Okada that passed. The rider slowed, eyeing me suspiciously. I must have looked like I'd crawled out of a grave. "I beg you," I gasped. "Just take me anywhere far from here." As the bike roared into the night, I glanced back at the mansion. From the distance, I could only imagine Mr. Tony's fury when he discovered I was gone. And I knew this wasn't over. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in a small, dimly lit room in a cheap roadside lodge, the leather pouch open before me. Each item inside was more damning than the last photographs of Anthony in blood-stained ritual robes, signed bank transfers to a top politician, and the diary detailing each sacrifice night for the past 7 years. Every word screamed danger, but they also screamed justice. My first instinct was to go to the police, but I quickly crushed that thought. I had seen enough in Legis to know that power could buy silence, and Mr. Tony's money ran deeper than the ocean. One wrong move, and I would be dragged back to that golden room. My fingers trembled as I pressed send from the burner account I created. The effect was instant. By noon, every radio, TV, and phone in Nigeria was buzzing with one name, Anthony Okafor. The headlines were merciless, billionaire businessman, linked to ritual killings, political elite, implicated in cult activities. Where is Anthony Okafor? Anthony's empire crumbled in hours. His investors pulled out, his business partners vanished, and the gates of his mansion were swarmed by reporters. Some rumored it to be a blackmail by some business partners, but the detailing was too much to be ignored. His home was raided, but Anthony Okafor himself was gone. A private jet out of Murtala Mohammed Airport had left just before the story broke. Rumors said he was hiding in South Africa. Before disappearing, he'd sent me one last message through a mutual contact. "I underestimated you. You cost me everything. But remember this, I will find you." I read it twice, then deleted it. I didn't have the luxury of fear right now. Using the huge sum of money Mr. Tony had once offered as hush money, I went straight to my village in Enugu. My mother's health had been failing for months, the medical bills piling higher than hope itself. That night I paid for every treatment my mother needed, stocked the house with food, and made sure my younger siblings were enrolled in school. It was the first time in years I saw my mother smile. With what was left of the money, I moved to a quiet town on the outskirts of Abuja, far from the noise of Lagos. I started a small catering business, cooking for offices and events. Nothing fancy, but honest work. Still, I never truly relaxed. Every time a strange car slowed outside my house, my heart raced. Every time an unfamiliar number called my phone, my breath cut. Every night before bed, I checked the locks twice. Because Anthony Okafor was out there. And men like him don't forget.